Make sure communication with the seller needs to be consistent as well. So if it doesn't start out of the gate well, sellers should be wary of agents who are willing to cut their commissions just like that. You want to make sure that the agent you're hiring is fully committed.
Hey, what's up, guys? Emmanuel here, and welcome to the Clever Genius podcast. Where really our mission is to kind of help you learn what other agents or other people in every other industry is doing so that you can try to steal some nuggets to help out your business. And today I have a very special guest, a good friend of mine, one of my clients, worked with her for it's probably been a decade now, right, Bethany? It's been a minute. She is the brokerage owner of Californian Estates, a super successful brokerage in Beverly Hills. And I wanted to have her come on and talk to me today really about the decision-making process of the average consumer, the average, homeowner or buyer, and how they process selecting a real estate agent. So, hey, Bethany, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Hi, Emmanuel. It's a pleasure to be here, especially for a really important topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the nuggets that, and you've managed, I don't know, how many agents now have you managed like over the course of the years? Hundreds, maybe?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, yeah. So I'm pretty sure
And
you've
we're just
had
an
to.
independent boutique brokerage. We're we're not affiliated with one of the big box guys. We're small, we're
Mhm.
independent, and we've really tried to create systems and forge paths to provide a lot of value and service to our agents, but ultimately to our clients as well. And that's one of the reasons why this topic is close and dear to my heart.
Exactly, exactly.
You know,
Yeah,
the
and that said, I'm totally excited to dive into it because this is your zone of genius. This is where you're the expert at. All right, so let's dive into my first big question for you. What are some of the most important qualities to look for, or do you think that the average consumer looks for inside of a real estate agent?
um I mean, first off, let's just kind of create the context, right?
Okay,
The
go for
the house that this homeowner is trying to sell
it.
is
Mhm.
probably their biggest asset, right? Like they've probably lived there for a long time. They probably have equity in that house. It's probably a part of a bigger plan for them. So the first thing is that we have to put ourselves in their position, right? Like what's going to be in service most to them. So yes, of course, they're going to want a killer agent with sharp teeth, right, to get them the
Mhm.
best price. But it's a little bit more than that as well. Like we kind of dive deeper in what makes a killer agent, right? So, firstly, um, the agent should be very responsive to the seller situation, right? Because selling a home is yes, of course they want the highest price, but there's so many other things that are involved in the process of selling a home, right? Like
Mhm.
sometimes it's an emotional experience for them. Sometimes it means they have to do so much work in order to even get it ready for the market. Sometimes it means packing and getting rid of stuff and making, repairs and renovations. Like that means time, that means money, that means effort. It means a lot for them. So there's a lot of potential obstacles for a seller to get to that final happy place of closing escrow and moving on to the next thing in their life. And a really good agent needs to understand those problems, listen very well, and be very responsive to those. So that's the first thing. I mean, they need to be that also boils down to communication, right?
Mhm.
Like communicating really well with that client. Um, okay, so next, the agent really needs to be creative, right? And how they're solving those problems. Um, if you think about it, we're both sales and we're marketing, right? So you got to take that house, you got to package it up, you got to market it properly, and find a really creative path to market. So, what do I mean by that? Not every house is the same. Let me just turn that off. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. No
Not every
worries.
house is the same,
Yeah.
right? Like every house has its unique characteristics. It has its, you know, interesting aspects. It has its aspects that maybe seem like they don't provide a lot of value, but maybe they do. Every house is different. We can't treat this like a cookie cutter situation. So a seller should look for an agent that is being very creative about how they're going to package that home for its unique characteristics, right? How it's going to find the right buyer market, target in on exactly the buyer market that's going to value that home more, maybe than other buyers. Find a strategic path to market. That might mean MLS straight out of the gate. It might mean an off market strategy first. All in all, if a seller feels like it's a run of the mill, formulaic way to sell a house, the agent's just going to take some pretty pictures, throw it on the MLS, wait for the calls come in, I'd say move on. You know, you got to move
Yeah.
on from that. You've got to find somebody who's
Yeah.
creative, strategic, proactive to package the house, get it to the right buyers, and get the highest price and the best terms. And
Love it. I love it.
can I give you an
Can we?
example?
Yeah, I was going to actually ask, can you give me an example? Because I think that would be very helpful
So yeah,
to
it kind
unpack
of
that.
seems like
Yeah.
a little amorphic in the way that I say it, but I hope this story will kind of give a good illustration of it. So my husband and I, Maurice, we own the company together, and we have developed a software that helps sellers understand the value add potential of their home. So
Mm.
that means that if you've got like an older house, maybe some deferred maintenance, maybe it doesn't look as pretty as the rest of the houses on the street, well, comping it against those other houses isn't necessarily telling you the whole picture. For houses that fit this kind of description, there's a
Mhm.
hidden value there, right? We know from our software that you can build to a certain size, you can renovate to a certain size, and that has value to a very specific buyer group, investors or developers, who will pay more for that kind of property because they know that they can renovate it, build it, and hit a healthy ROI at the end.
Oh,
So
love it.
that's
Mhm.
really advantageous for the seller to know that, because if they
Yeah.
don't know that, they're leaving money on the table, right?
Exactly. And most agents aren't, I think, well, maybe that's the key here. Like most agents need to start thinking more creatively about how to approach the marketing based off of this type of example. Like, well, don't comp against or don't compete against what everyone else is doing, which is the red ocean. Compete in the blue ocean, which is a completely different way of thinking because there's a type of consumer that actually would pay more for the value of just an average property, right?
That's exactly right. So I'll give you an example. So a couple years ago, we had an opportunity to list this home in Brentwood, and it was owned by the same seller since the 60s. I mean, it was a little lady, 90 years old. She had raised her kids there. Her husband was a connoisseur of architecture. So this house was a Pierre Koenig. It was a time capsule of 1960s mid-century modern. Kids all
Mhm.
moved away. Sadly, the husband passed away. She's in her 90s, loves the home, but just can't manage it all on her own. She's got to move on to an assisted care living.
Yeah.
So, um, before we went to the house, before we actually understood the house a little bit more, we just got a baseline and did what every agent does, right? We
Yeah.
look
Get
on
comps.
the
Yeah.
comps and go, okay, well, what's the market in Brentwood and what's happening for sales and price per square foot and et cetera, et cetera. We looked at
Mhm.
all the Zillows, we looked at all the RPRs, and like you name it. We looked at all those third party algorithms, and the highest that we found was 2.8. And I don't remember exactly, but I think it was like a 2,600 square foot house or something. So, anyways, we step in the house and immediately we see like this is something different. Like this is
Mhm.
a special house. She had not really touched it. I mean, it still had all the accoutrements of a 1960s case study, Pierre
uh,
Conique. So she tells us that she wants 4.5 million for it.
uh,
That seemed at the time like a steep, I don't know, like
push.
a little
Yeah.
rich, like a steep climb. But we dove deep and understood that there was a value to it being a PR coding. And not only that, when we ran it through our realty system,
Hmm.
we found that you could build an additional 3,000 square foot on the property.
Like, are you referring to
So,
like an ADU or or just
no, this was
extension?
actually, no, it wasn't really including an ADU. This was, this is Brentwood. It's surrounded by multi-million dollar
Yeah.
trophy mansions. This
Hmm.
was, 2,600, but really nice big lot view, all the things that are attractive to an investor and
Hmm.
buyer. So we put together our marketing plan and we got creative
Yeah.
because the comp price versus 4.5, I mean, it's nearly a $2 million delta. Like, that's a lot. So
Yeah.
we packaged it as, with its architectural pedigree, with its development potential. And we said, who is the right buyer group for this? The retail buyer who wants to move their family in is not going to necessarily appreciate this
Yeah.
home, right?
That the history with the home.
The
Yeah.
history, I mean, they might, but are they going to pay $2 million more for it?
Probably not.
Questionable. So
Yeah.
who would? So we said, okay, we need to target off market developers, art savvy, sort of architecturally savvy investors, because there are people like that who will literally buy something just because it is so unique,
Mhm.
and because it is so sought after and by a certain group. And so that's what we
Yeah.
did. And we knew that if we had gone to the MLS first, we would be casting out this wide net for everybody, but knowing that there was only a very kind of specific archetype that we saw willing to pay a premium price.
Yeah.
So
The
that's what we
extra
did.
2 million.
We
Yeah.
found that target market. We
Mhm.
marketed it to them. We got it in Dwell and some other um,
Mhm.
architectural magazines, and within a week we had the offer, and we had it
That's awesome.
negotiated. And not only did we negotiate for her sales price of
Mhm.
4.5, we got her a 30-day free lease back so that
Ooh.
she could very comfortably, after close of escrow,
Uh-huh.
pack up her life of whatever 50 some odd years being there and move on. And it
Gosh,
was
I
just
love it.
smooth. And
I
so
love it.
that, I think, kind of illustrates the need to include the seller's obstacles, and
Mhm.
their needs into your sales and marketing plan, and then also the home's unique characteristics.
So I'm curious on this one though, because typical agent, they're going to go over there, they're going to say, "Hey, these are all the comps. It's comping for two something." Um, how did you package up your presentation to make it different? Because I'm curious if there's like a nugget from there that we can take away of like, okay, maybe this is the way I need to be thinking when I'm doing a seller presentation.
Yeah, well, for us, we knew we're
Mhm.
always thinking about value add potential.
Okay.
Obviously, if it's a brand new luxury built home, it's that's not what we're talking about right here
Yeah.
in this
There's not much
scenario.
you can do with that. You can't really
Right. I
create a
mean, now
story out
you're
of
you're
that.
gonna you're gonna you're gonna package it for all its luxury and comforts and the lifestyle and the value of living in this beautiful modern home. But in this case, it wasn't there yet, and we knew that buyers for that Brentwood area will pay that premium price for that kind of home. So um, we looked at from the value add lens. Of course, this is why we built the realty software in the first place, being the software that analyzes and measures value add potential within a larger market
Hmm.
um, concept. So we first wanted to look at it for what it was. What it was an architecturally significant home by one of the greatest architects in the mid-century era. What it wasn't was like this luxury Brentwood home that I'm talking about. So we
Yeah.
wanted to package it for both. We wanted to give we really wanted to shine a spotlight on the architectural pedigree, but we really wanted to package the aspiration for what it could be. And then, of course, we did like a whole financial analysis to show that there was an ROI at the end of the day for a developer
Hmm.
if they were going to go down that path and, maintain the integrity of the architecture, but also make it a little bit more modern, for the modern day retail buyer.
Thanks for sharing that really awesome story and those examples. So I'm curious, and this is kind of leading into my next question, which is the determination of experience for a real estate agent. You're a consumer. You obviously want to be working with an expert. What is the best way to determine expertise? Because it feels like, oh yeah, just the amount of sales that you've done is kind of like the given way to assume that yeah, this person's an expert. But I'm wondering if there's any nuance to that, and I wonder if you can speak on behalf of maybe newer agents that are trying to win a listing that are currently competing with other agents that have more sales under their belt. Like, what's the strategy there of expertise?
I mean, that's the thing. If you're a seller looking to get the most out of your biggest asset, experience is critical. So, but yes, there is, I think, some nuance to that.
Mhm.
If an agent has sold a lot of homes in the relative area, that definitely says something, right? I mean, that's somebody
Mhm.
you probably want to talk to. Then I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into what the results were from those homes. How did they achieve those results? What was their marketing plan? How did they, look at one house in the neighborhood differently than maybe another house differently? Um,
Mhm.
I'd want to understand the methodology. Um, and then I would compare that, I would weigh that against the kind of property that I as a seller have. Do you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like, um, if I have, you know, um, a small little house, what are the other results they've achieved for a house that is similar in
Yeah.
style and condition and whatever else?
It reminds me of like, oh, I've sold a bunch of property, but they're all like newly built townhomes. And if we fast forward, or if we go back to the example you shared about that mid-century home, like if I'd never done any of those, then you're comparing apples to oranges at that point, I think, right?
That's true. That's true. So
Yeah.
results are important. How they got there is equally, if not more important. And the way that agent thinks should resonate with the seller in some way or another. It should feel like those results can be sort of placed on top of their situation.
Gotcha.
So for a newer agent who doesn't have that experience, it it's a challenge. It is. I'm not gonna lie.
Hmm.
Also, can help one of those agents win a listing is authenticity, um, being a really great listener and addressing the issues that a seller may have or foresee or their apprehensions, whatever. I still think that a newer agent can utilize more creative methods to be sort of, above the rest, cut above the rest. Um, and, if it's a situation that requires it, they might consider partnering with another experienced agent, right? Because even though they may want to, have the whole commission or whatever on their own,
Hmm.
I would recommend that an agent look at their career in the long term. And if they can partner with somebody on some of these key listings that require an extra level of expertise, they're going to learn from that agent. They're going to build up their roster of sold homes and their results to point back to,
Yeah.
and get to a point where they don't need to partner with anybody at all because they have that experience to look at.
Oh, exactly, exactly. And I think that'd be an easy pitch to a seller, a home owner that's planning to sell that's on the fence,
Mhm.
especially if it's a newer agent. Um, Talk to me about red flags. Like, what are the typical red flags that a homeowner sees, and how like maybe unbeknownst to maybe the average agent, maybe they don't realize they're giving off those red flags. So like, what are some ideas of like red flags to kind of stay away from?
I mean, listening and communication, I probably said it already 20 times,
Yeah.
and I hate to beat a dead horse, but
Uh,
that is really key. If the agent is not asking good questions about the seller, where they're at in their experience of selling, what their goals are toward the end, what are their pain points, what are um their goals. If the agent is not really drilling down into that, it's going to be very, very hard for them to
mm,
create a sales and marketing plan that speaks to that that individual home seller
yeah. Hmm.
in that home. So that's one. Follow up, right? If they've had a listing appointment and there's really no follow up afterwards, or it's very, sort of short and pithy, not substantive, that would be a red flag to me, because
Hmm.
that's probably how they're going to respond to other buyers.
Oh yeah.
And communication with the seller, it needs to be consistent as well. So if it doesn't start out of the gate well, that's tough.
Hmm.
Um, Red flags might also be, sometimes you have very like big top producing agents. Sometimes they have so many assistants that they depend on that they're not as hands on. So I want to make sure that if I am whomever that I'm hiring,
Hmm.
assistants are fine, whatever, but like make sure they're hands on in this process and it's just not one of many. And the last thing I would say is, and this is totally counterintuitive, I'm sure, but
Uh,
sellers should be wary of agents who are willing to cut their commissions just like that. Let me
yeah.
unpack that a little bit more. There's a
Okay.
lot of time and money that goes into selling a house. A lot of that comes from marketing, right?
Hmm.
And if agents are too quick to give discounted commissions, then there's going to be cut corners. There just is. They're not going to spend the money on the marketing like they probably should or would otherwise. Um, they might not give it the same amount of attention if they know that the commission is reduced. So I would just say, obviously sellers want to be mindful with what they're paying. I appreciate that, but there is a sweet spot there. You want to make sure that the agent you're hiring is fully committed.
Gotcha. Which justifies the full commission, not just some discount, because then
Yeah,
it's
I
just
mean, because
the
they
quickest to
have
the
their
bottom.
their fees, they have their liability, and they have to be
Mhm.
remunerated for their own time, and they have taxes and brokerage fees and everything else. So something's got to give, and you don't want it to be the marketing of your house. You want all in.
Love it. I love it. And speaking of the red flags, I'm curious. Let's unpack this from the consumer's point now. Of hey, I want to list my house. I want to talk to a bunch of different agents to select which is going to be the right agent that I'm going to run with. Um, what in your opinion is the decision making process through that, and how can an agent position themselves as the winning agent of a homeowner interviewing a bunch of different agents to list their property?
That's a good question. Obviously, a seller would be doing their own due diligence by interviewing a lot of agents, and
Mm-hmm.
they should, until they get to that point where they feel a real connection with an agent. So, how can they position themselves above? Um, I'm going to go back to create to understanding each individual situation with a homeowner in the larger context, and creating the best marketing plan and the best path to market possible to address those sellers' specific problems, wishes, dreams, objectives, and goals. Because it's very easy. I mean, most agents are just sort of taught a traditional sort of formulaic way of getting the home photographed and throwing it on the MLS, and the calls will come in. So if it were me selling my home, I'd want somebody who Surely, I mean, that's part of the plan, right? There's nothing
Mhm.
wrong with
That's
that.
like the
But
baseline of the
what
plan.
else are you going to do? What
Yeah.
else are you going to do? So let me give you another example.
Okay.
Um, we kind of feel like the MLS is your silver bullet. Use it last. Don't use it
Mhm.
first. If you have this great house, you're a seller, you want this great sales price, they sellers often think their house is worth more than it is very often, and they want to go for that. But if you go to the MLS with a high number, statistics show it sits there. It kind of dwindles on the market. People don't put offers in, they don't buy it. Next thing you know, you're 30 days in, 45, whatever. And there's a whole sort of buyer psychology of, well, it's been on the market for so long. What's wrong with it? Right.
Yeah.
And so then it continues to sit on the market. You got price reductions, and statistics show that houses that go on the market too high, they end up selling for, it takes a lot longer for them to sell, and they end up selling for less than what it should have been on in the first place. So what's the solution? The solution is, our solution that we've used many, 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 many times, is to package the home, market it off market. When you
Mhm.
do it off market, there is no, you know, there's no historical data about it being off market. You can maybe try those higher prices. You can test the price. You can get feedback. You can understand how the market is reacting to that product. And if it doesn't sell in the off market period, then at least you're going to the MLS with knowledge on your side.
And that's the silver bullet, pretty much.
And that's
That's
the silver bullet. So
yeah.
why would you use your silver bullet right out of the gate?
Yeah. Makes absolutely no sense.
It
Exactly.
doesn't. But that
Yeah.
means that, as an agent, and this is what, this is part of your value proposition,
Mhm.
that you understand how to package that property. You have the databases for it. You know how to get them in front of eyeballs, right? You have this access so that your off market period can be really impactful.
Thanks for sharing that. That was super helpful. All right, next question for you is actually with regards to questions. I know that one of the big things about being prepared for going into a seller's presentation is essentially knowing what questions they're going to ask. Because if you have because at the end of the day, those questions are just objections. And if you have a good rebuttal or response to the objection, you're more than likely to win the listing. So I'm wondering, based off of your experience, what are some common questions to ask or that are asked so that the average agent that's probably watching this is going to like, oh, I need to make sure I have a solid answer to that question.
Um, well, I actually produced a questionnaire for sellers,
Oh, nice. Okay.
ask their agents, and it's a 20 questions
Mhm.
separated amongst pricing the home, evaluating
Yeah.
the home, marketing the home, negotiating the home, once it's in escrow.
Yeah.
Oh, and going to the market actually as well. So, 4 questions, 5 categories. If you want to link that to your podcast, by all means.
Oh,
But it
please.
is,
I'll drop it in the description. I'll drop the link to it. I really appreciate that. So I guess if you're hanging out with me today or hanging out with us today, if you want to work on some of your objection handling, you'll get some opportunities in the link below. Cool. Thanks, Bethany. Appreciate that.
yeah. But just, sellers, a lot of times sellers don't know the questions to ask, right?
Mm,
Like they
that's a
are,
good.
um, they are professionals in a totally different industry. They just know that they want a result. And I think that, they want to know, they want to know all the basic things that probably all of your listeners already know. They want to know what should I do with my house to make it more attractive? How am I going to get this sales price? How am I going to make this a seamless transition? But I think that a lot of sellers, even though they're bright and successful in their careers, don't know the questions to ask. So I think that the agents should be proactive in maybe addressing some of these questions with answers from the outset, right? Like basically don't wait for them to ask. So for example,
Yeah.
Maurice and I have and teach our agents to look at properties a little bit differently. And again, I'm pivoting back to our realty program, our software. We help our sellers understand that looking at what sold down the street isn't always a great barometer of the value of your house. And we have a different methodology. And we take that time to explain it to them, to kind of educate them, to provide that service to them. We do it all the time with clients who maybe aren't ready to even sell now. They just want to kind of have this background information for when they are ready. And that service-oriented approach is vital. So we help them understand how we evaluate a home. They don't know this. They don't think about developers and why a developer would pay more. They just want their house sold. So we help them, we proactively answer those questions and get them thinking a little bit differently. And what that does is not only give them a little bit more knowledge about their property than they had before, but it also engenders a lot of confidence.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense because if you're presenting all of what there is to offer, then it essentially diffuses any potential objections or questions that might arise at the end of whatever presentation that you're given for the property.
Yep.
Right?
So I would be prepared as an agent to proactively think about questions that they should ask, they might not be asking as it relates to how you're planning to market their home, how you
Mm.
are planning to leverage any opportunity that's there, whether it's one of those hidden value opportunities that we talk about with value add properties or some other amenity, location, view, like whatever the case is. Talk about how you you see the whole sales process working, how you see the communication aspect of that working, right? Like, how do they want to be communicated with throughout the process? Do they want just bullet points once a week or calls every day after showing? Ex- address the process and, the process of what it's like to be in an escrow too.
Well, I always look at what's happening before, what's happening during, and what's happening after, and you address the process for
Mm-hmm.
each one of those, and you kind of um, paint the picture. You create the map, I guess, because they don't really know what the map is. They're relying on you to point them in the right direction and then just follow the map. But if you're able to create the map, then it's a lot easier for them, for lack of a really weird analogy, for them to understand what they need to be doing,
Well,
which
you
will
couldn't have
build
said
the
it better.
confidence.
That's really
Yeah.
exactly it because there's so many stages, right? It's the pre-marketing stage, it's the marketing, it's the sales, it's the in escrow, it's what happens after. And each one of those is, there's pitfalls to navigate,
Oh, absolutely.
right? So you want to make sure that you're taking them through that process, and and it'll actually at that point maybe help them to start thinking of questions they didn't think about earlier. So um,
Very, very true. Very true. All right. Thanks so much for hanging with me. I have one more question to ask you, and it's more of an advice question. Do you have any piece of advice that you would be happy to bestow onto a real estate agent that's looking to try to get into listing more homes?
don't sound like everybody else, right? Look at this property as the seller's biggest investment. That is number one. If you have that as your guiding light, it will take you through all the pitfalls. Um, be very en- encompassing of how you approach the process, and try to think about selling the houses differently or more than just putting it on the MLS.
Yeah, we want to save the silver bullet.
We created our software, the realty software, because it evaluates a home completely differently than anything else out there. And so when we go to sellers and we have that conversation, it's a done deal.
Yeah, it's because
It's a
it's a
done
completely
deal.
unique approach.
It's a
Absolutely.
completely unique approach that wins them the best price and the best terms. I mean, that's the results that we've had. So that sounds different, right? You're giving sellers more options. We're taking it on off market before we go on market.
Hmm.
It's allowing so much more seller control, so much more seller options, right? And so
Yeah.
that to me is key in garnering that confidence and trust with your potential client and converting them into your
Future
your client.
client. Yeah. Love it. Love it. Thank you. Hey, Bethany, this was really awesome. I really appreciate you doing
Oh,
this.
thank you.
By the way, if you guys got value or found value in this, please make sure you hit that like button and the subscribe button. Plenty more awesome, really useful uh, videos like this to come. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for hanging out. Catch you later. Bye.
Bye.